Okay, well, I'm going to start into the webinar, prepared a slide deck, so I'll just share my screen now and introduce myself once we are in. All righty. Well, kia ora koutou, everybody. My webinar is Young People in Privacy and Challenging Our Assumptions. As part of Privacy Week, it's a real privilege to be part of this, and I was very excited by the theme about myth busting. So delighted to be able to prepare this presentation. I'm going to open now with karakia, and so join in with me if you'd like to. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa po namu te moana. Hei huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou, ia tātou katoa, hurie, taikie. May peace be widespread. May the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all this day. Let us show respect for each other, for one another, bind us all together as we move through the conversation around myth busting, privacy and young people. As I said, I was delighted with this topic because my thesis for my master's was all about young people and privacy. So, ko Anjie Webster, toku ingoa. I come from an education background. I'm a mama of two gorgeous young women who taught me much about the online space as much as I was exploring it as well, and also teaching in an all-boys school. I've had the privilege of working for NetSafe as an education advisor for a long period of time, and also with other agencies and organisations who also work in this space around the awareness, safety online, well-being, security, privacy. And it's just a real privilege to work and coordinate with them. I'm also a Ministry of Education accredited facilitator, and I'm an unlikely online gamer. So that's another story, another webinar, but found myself deep in the research and thinking I might just dip my toes. Never expected to like it, and I absolutely love online gaming. So stepping back, those in the room, some of you will maybe identify with the technology on the left, or maybe you may identify with being on the right. And I think this is an amazing image that reflects where technology and what its output is not necessarily taken into consideration what the implications might be. And so I can attest to being a teacher and in my earliest years using this Bander machine, Gestetner, and certainly being a student and my students taking those fresh sheets that have just gone through a spirit base and inhaling. So I don't know who remembers, but it takes us back. The journey with technology has been fast, feels fast when it wasn't in existence, and it's evolved. And of course, our gen today, it just is. There's no comparison with what was before and what is today. Those of you maybe in the room can remember phones where we were able to just text or phone, and it was a delight, it was innovative, and it was enough at that time. And then we moved quickly into swipe screens, touch screens, and apps. And that opened up a whole new world for learning and our capacity to communicate, play, so on and so forth. And it happened quickly. And then we moved into, even the things that we like doing, like our music, where once it was quite an isolated but cool technology where we maybe had mobile cassette players, and then we had iPods, and of course, streaming services have just completely changed that landscape. So it's been swift and it's been across all sectors of our lives and improving, but also bringing about challenges and inequities that are important, I think, to note. And those challenges are both in the harm space with what can harm us, our well-being, ourselves, and our privacy, is at much greater risk because we are now seamlessly online. And then can't not mention the evolving nature of technology, where now we've got AI quite firmly in the landscape, generative or LLMS, and chatbots and all kinds of interesting things going on in that space, which I will talk to shortly. And as we journey down and look at young people and privacy, if you've got any thoughts, questions, and things that arise, please pop them in the chat. And at some stage, I will stop and maybe we can look at those, or definitely at the end. Really, really love your thoughts and ideas, and any collaborations will be fantastic. I'd like to start here. Some of you may know Sonia Livingston and the team at the London School of Economics, and the incredible research they've been doing over a number of years with huge data pools of children and young people, looking at the impacts, the opportunities of children and the digital devices and the digital world that they engage in. And this is, I think, a really significant piece of research that we need to pause and consider, because already I think when we think young people and privacy and online, just my term online, I use in a very broad brushstroke sense. And what we've been urged to do when we're putting out research reports or media reporting is to be very careful and specific about our terminology, because we know that digital or online does not encompass all of those sorts of experiences or activities or insights. It's what we're at risk of doing is to perpetuate myths and assumptions. I'm thinking offhand, I'll often hear teachers in schools or parents say, oh, kids are addicted to their phones today. Well, if we step back from that, first of all, kids are not all addicted to phones. They're not all addicted. They're not all addicted to phones. And so to step back from that, we need to be specific, and we need to make sure that we are addressing and reporting on what is actually being looked into. So with that in mind, I was so interested and curious at a time when our daughters were teenagers. I was teaching in an all boys year 1 to 8 school, and I was very much into the digital technology and teaching many robotics, coding, filmmaking, all kinds of things in my profession. So it got me very interested when social media platforms were introduced, and I could see very quickly the diverse types of engagement that the boys, my teens, the adults, and how open it all was. And it got me very curious. And I thought, wow, started to connect the dots to think about what implications it might have for schools, for whānau, for young people. And that drove my desire to do my thesis. And basically, I looked at privacy. What is it to young people? And in relation to how they viewed privacy, what were they doing with their connects or disconnects in online spaces? So this is a brief summary of the insights that came from my thesis. And I was so excited. I was absolutely delighted. I'm not reflecting this in statistics here, but simply where I assumed there would be quite a lot of response around what's getting changed, or bathroom or hygiene aspects around privacy would be numerous. Many would mention it. Well, in fact, it was the opposite. There were only a very few who mentioned aspects around that, but many had the most comprehensive and mature, what I believe was mature insights into their concern for privacy. They understand what privacy is. They identify domains and context for privacy. They care strongly about these. And yes, disconnects exist between these points and the disclosure of self online in different contexts and for different motivations. Clearly, there were 3 domains that came out of the qualitative data. There was what I themed the personal, the social, and the physical. And there was so much rich data. It was just exciting. Under the personal, there were 4 key sub-aspects: autonomy and control, and numerous statements around what this looked like. And simply, in summary, strong sense of choosing who gets to know what, who sees what, having that control. And we know autonomy is a fundamental human need and critical to well-being. So it's very interesting that that was a strong factor showing itself in the data. Personal information and confidentiality. They had clear ideas about personal information and constructs of limiting who sees what. Also, with personal was that sense of personal belongings and ownership. So they attributed privacy to my things are an extension of me, and I get to control these aspects. People have to ask me if they want something of mine or want to come in my bedroom or want to borrow my basketball. So it was very, very cool. Personal space and solitude was something I didn't even imagine was going to come through. So there were many thoughts around this as well, and concepts around being able to have my own thoughts, not having the interference from others when I want to be in my own headspace, and being alone, being able to take myself physically to another place and expect to be left alone, and that there's a place for that decompression. And they attributed this back to aspects of privacy. Under the social, there was relationships and trust. And very clearly, boundaries and consent are really important. They expected loyalties, they offered loyalty, they expected respect, and expected to be able to share safely in those relationships where there was depth of disclosure. And that also pertained to trust. So the more I disclose, the deeper our expectation and sense of trust is. But if something goes bad, it was absolutely deemed a breach of trust. And this word breach came up quite often, and it was very tied to loyalties. And lastly, the domain physical was around body privacy. So this was expected, but just so few were actually sharing these kinds of thoughts. So getting changed, being able to be in your own bedroom, get changed, and not having people watch. This idea of not being watched by people you don't know, whether it be online or not online, and consent and boundaries around that. And the older you were, the greater your sense of expectation that you should be able to have this kind of privacy. And if I can just say, my opening question to students was not what does privacy mean to you, because when you research, you can't attribute meaning to a question in its beginning, but simply my question was, what is privacy? And so these are the sorts of things that came through. Very, very founded on a sense of rights, which was very, very cool to see that they had that strong sense of rights, given the space to participate in the research. You could see that they had the space to express it. And also their individuality. So I know in one of the webinars yesterday, one of the things that came through, that culture and other aspects are really important. And this did come through as well, where, the degree in which disclosure might happen is based on many, many different factors related to trust and loyalties, but also, there are things there's cultural, social, geographical things, the degree in which they can participate in and use platforms that allow them to disclose, etc. So what do others say about young people and privacy and disclosure? So, given that the myth that I'm busting is that, young people don't care about privacy, they share anything online, they really don't care today. We know from the theory of motivation, however, that, and we're thinking about young people on social media, places where they can interact, engage, share, upload, on share, that as they're developing age and stage and growing up, there's that whole thing around weighing up the benefits versus the risk or the cost or the downsides side. And where we know that the benefit outweighs any risk or downside in the moment or in the longer term, there's more likelihood that they're going to act on something and do something. And it can come very impulsively, as we know, due to developmental aspects and so on and so forth. So yeah, motivation theory and the reasons why disclosure will happen are many. However, we also know that the spaces and places that they're in, and this has been spoken about in some of the other webinars as well, we know that we are the product. We are not the customer. The services that we sign up to and use are not free when we're actually giving of ourselves. We start that process the moment we sign up on an account. And of course, children and young people are signing up into different spaces and accounts. Five Rights Foundation from the UK, Disrupted Childhood, really worth a read. They do great work in the space of children and young people online as well. This, I think, is really important, taking that on a little bit and digressing slightly around the impact of that digital environment. It offers the promise of creativity and knowledge, which is exciting and learning, but its current dependence on persuasive design makes it a challenging environment for young people. And it can increase risk, limit creativity, and even stifle development. Oopsie. And so taking this and digressing slightly, but the importance is here. Research is coming out. This particular one I'm drawing on and I've cited here is obviously from overseas, but there's international and national research that shows clearly that the neurological makeup of our youngest children today is very different from the previous generation. So when we think about a child starting school at 5, the very matrix of their brain are showing significant differences that have an impact on them going forward. So very advanced maturation of their visual cortex, but in contrast, an underdevelopment of those key aspects that are so needed in their learning and development, the language acquisition, their comprehension, letter recognition, using the same part of the brain where empathy is developed. So underdevelopment of empathy, memory coding, reading facial and emotional expressions. So impacts from screen use at much younger ages for longer periods of time, there are clearly changes happening. We also know that what young people are doing online is gendered. So drawing on a study from NetSafe that looked just at male and female in terms of gender in the research from ages 13 to 17, those who participated, it was quite clear that there were similarities and overlaps, but clearly our girls are tuning into the platforms and spaces where social connection can happen. It's a real driver. And given that identity develops in our girls around about 9 years of age, and round about then, much younger than our boys, that need to belong and be part of a group is quite a driver, but also the social conflict that falls out of that, and also the sorts of disclosure and sharing that will happen. And the difference, Brene Brown talks about fitting in versus belonging. So fitting in, we've got that whole concept of having to meet the measure of the group, the benchmark of what's okay and what's not. So we may have to shelve and withdraw aspects of self to fit in and have a sense of belonging, versus that belonging where we actually can be ourselves, our true authentic selves. So there's a real jostling that goes on for our girls. Our boys, the gaming space, watching videos, creating a lot of that content on YouTube, things like that, watching, porn's an issue, but the banter, the laughs and the just for jokes for our guys. And so what they will disclose and the way in which they will do it differs. And, there are various challenges and harms and risks that fall out of that because of the gendered experience and engagement that they bring to some of the spaces that they are in. Also, other groups who identify in other ways, there are vulnerabilities, those with disabilities, those whose sexuality or gender falls out of this research are very vulnerable online as well. So disclosure and the motivations and context for some of the biggies and the things that happen and spill out in the harm space online, sharing of passwords. So a lot of kids and teens and adults will share passwords for all kinds of reasons. And of course, that's super risky. We know that. And harm falls out of it, and lots of issues for schools. Kids can be pressured. It can happen inadvertently. A student sees a teacher writing down a password of a student that's forgotten theirs, and they go on and jump around in their space. Relationship, trust, convenience. Kids forget passwords, so they ask for their mate's password to get on something. It's that whole motivation theory thing. Personal information. So the platforms themselves require disclosure way more than we think is needed. And so lots of disclosure going on because we want to be on the apps and sites and use them. Disclosure of intimate or confidential content. So again, many varied motivations and reasons why that will happen. Young people and children, 10, 11, 12-year-olds pressured for content of nudes, that kind of thing. A normative sense of it. Everyone's doing it. Well, they're not, but it can feel like that. Explorative, so exploring self, and that's part of our teen journey into adulthood of identity, exploration. Friendship or relationship related, inadvertent, jokes and laughs, unaware of the implications of sharing nudes, and when other people's content is on-shared. And again, some of that can be normative, it can be impulsive, maybe it's for harm or retribution intended. Maybe there's been a perception of consent to do so. But of course, some of these things carry great risk and are tricky. If you've been in some of the other webinars, you might have heard or already read the report from Office of the Privacy Commission around safeguarding children and young people's privacy. Really cool key findings came out of that. And certainly there are multiple aspects to it. So yes, young children are on social media. They're also on online games and using other programs like Discord, in which they are real-time talking and sharing with other players, and they're quite young. Parents who are posting on social media and posting content of their own children, seeking a following and monetizing this. So already the digital footprint has started of a young person before their ability to consent or have autonomy and choice. With that, of course, carries a whole lot of risk, because we are learning from a lot of research that those who follow some of that content, if it's, someone's daughter and she's a dancer or she's a gymnast, a lot of the followings can be men, and a lot of the comments and things can be very, very sexualized and things like that. So that's another whole conversation. Yeah, so very, very interesting. And yes, a minimum age requirement for using social media. 99% of the participants in this report said they would like to see that. Well, we do know that young people care about their data. This is from a study from FOSSI, Family Online Safety Institute from the States, done by Kantar. And the report is Generative AI, Emerging Habits, Hopes and Fears. The countries here were Japan, Germany, and the USA. In a nutshell, this is what parents prioritized as what was important to them regarding AI and their concerns. And this is what teens. So teens in the US said data transparency was number one, was really important. Germany, young people said it was important. It's right up there in the top three. And in Japan, they had, other aspects around what was important there, but it's important to them. What's happening to their data? in an AI environment. Well, I thought this was worth sharing. So a couple of interesting things around young people and AI and where they are enjoying, being curious, exploring, and engaging. So we have chatbots that can present themselves as any kind of avatar or real-looking person, and people can engage with them across a whole lot of different themes. This one was created, The Psychologist, was created by Sam Zaya, and he's a Kiwi. He's a psychology student, goes by Blazeman98, and he has this chatbot, and you can talk to it, and it will give incredibly affirming, positive, careful messages back. But it is AI generated, and it's huge. It's been so popular. And given when we understand ratios of students to a psychologist, how possible is it versus jumping on a free app and seeing what it says and walking away and feeling a little bit better about life, or not? And of course, what kind of personal content is being entered into these? Each AI chatbot has in this particular site, its own sort of aspects around data and what the data is gathering and who's seeing it. It's not the way with all of them. Here, Gen AI emotional support is on the horizon. So this also is talking around using AI, generative AI, for any type of emotional support. So this is now or have used. So in the US, lots of adults and teens have explored using AI for emotional support, and this is thinking about using it going forward. So in Japan, there is keen interest in the teens for thinking about AI, when you can talk to someone, when you have a sense of not having anyone else to talk to. Another way that AI is being used by some teens, I'd like to say many, but I can't give enough hard data on that, but there is starting to be some research around young people engaging with chatbot girlfriends, boyfriends, friends. And this is just a screen grab of no particular app, but there's plenty of apps on the App Store where you can have an AI boyfriend or girlfriend. You can generate what they look like, their attributes, the degree in which you'll engage with them. You can have paid services and take that way down other tracks should you choose to. And I have also heard from different teens that they've been playing with this. It's fun. Some of them it's jokes and laughs. Some of them it's serving to give them some kind of experience engaging on a romantic level with somebody, because they have got no capacity or confidence yet to do that in real life. So here is an example of a screen grab of types of data sharing that app may engage in. So it may share the data with third parties. It may collect photos, videos, messages, personal info, etc., etc. So kind of like, ooh, this is complicated. This is something to take note of. And this is a slide I use with parents and with students in schools. We know that the internet is learning from the internet. It's like a big old vacuum and popping out recycled info. It includes biases. It can get things wrong. Drawing us right back then to the rights of young people. And we think about Article 16, which really is, in summary, the right for children to be protected against the interference from others and other things that would take from them that's private to them, their home, their family, their correspondence, their honour and their reputation. So there's a lot of grey area given the AI, generative AI, the types of platforms and engagement that young people and children can participate in today. So moving on to this, so what's needed? Yesterday's webinar was really fascinating around what's needed. And this was talking about safeguarding children. And it's very clear that awareness, education is on top, and in ways in which it will relate to young people. Number one for me is student voice. If it's about them, then we need to do it with them. So that's their voice. So just firstly asking. The more we ask, the more we learn. The more we explain, the more they tune out. So one of the things I absolutely love from the Office of the Privacy Commission is this term kāpai or creepy. And I just think that's just super. So it's used in some of their resources where they challenge young people to think about, is this okay? Or is this kind of like got that edge where it's a bit yuck or totally creepy? So knowing that young people have an awareness, a need, and a want, and an expectation to not only have boundaries and consent for themselves and have autonomy over setting those, they also need our help to unpack what that looks like realistically and in a changing, evolving landscape. They don't have life experience. They are developing their life experience with what's in front of them and what they're in and who they're in with right now, and also what's being taken from them in order for them to participate and belong. Rights and responsibilities, it's such a sweet spot for engaging in any sort of learning and awareness and educating. So where we can unpack what our rights are, we can unpack the converse around what are our responsibilities then to others. And certainly creating relatable activities and opportunities in different contexts for young people is really important. So I'm thinking at home, definitely in schools, and just anywhere where young people have an opportunity to learn more about life skills, privacy being really important. Because of the space I work in organisations, kura, schools. I help whānau, staff, young people. I see so many blurred lines, parallels, overlaps between privacy, safety, and well-being online. And a lot of it's underpinned by critical thinking and the capacity to understand other people's points of view, to think critically around what's in front of me, whose values, whose point of view, are they authorized? Do they have the credentials? Whose voices are missing in content and things that we may see or read? The more we can critically think around what's been asked of us and what we've been shown and what our choices are, the more we can then weigh up what the benefits and risks are. Digital and media literacies, so important. This week is Media Literacy Week, and we just need these literacies. It's seamless, just so much time spent online. The fact that young people in schools from early ages are on devices for learning, there is a responsibility from home and in schools and kura to teach the skills and knowledge that support them to have safe and effective experiences in their learning and in their life. So that encompasses knowledge of the online environment and encompasses skills to navigate risks and challenges. And it's the fostering of the attitudes and values of citizenship, because we are one world, we're global. And haora and well-being, all of the above feeds into how well we fit into our own skin and how we're coping and how we're doing, and the confidence to take action when something happens or we're unsure, and to see that through to a successful outcome. The Privacy Commissioner, Michael Webster, also put a great article into the Education Gazette, April the 24th, it was published, and he's put some great pragmatic ideas around educating young people, around being a good digital citizen, and how those parallels between privacy and being online fit. So I recommend you take a look there. Great resources around, although I don't think there's enough. I really do not think there are enough great resources, but what's out there are good. And so different things can be explored. You can get in touch with me down the track, and I'm really happy to send any links to you around any of this. But there are resources available for teaching if you're in a school environment, working in any other capacity with young people, or if you're a parent or a carer. So if you are looking after other young people or your own, what do we need to do in that capacity? Well, number one, regular chats and checking in with your children and teens. And I put checking in, not checking on. And there's a real difference. It's being, it's shoulder to shoulder as opposed to, front to front. And a lot of my work I do and parent nights and things like that, I talk a lot about just effective ways to connect and reach your young people, because we need to stay on top of where they're at, what their thinking's at. Number one parent tip I would give, and as an educator, it's my number one as well, is just ask. Even if we know the answers and we want to explain and we want to tell, if we ask first and we say something like, hey, do you know about the privacy settings on Discord? I've got not a clue and I'd love to know more about it. Do you know anything about it? And so then if they don't know anything about it, you're both going to realize you don't know anything about it. Or if they know something, you're going to understand a little bit about what they do know. Or if they know a lot, you're going to feel really good about their knowledge. And so giving them the chance to express first what they know, and then you've got this, open platform to then keep building, talking, chatting. Always ask. Use news stories to discuss scenarios about what's happening, why it might have happened, the implications. So just find things, that are happening around the place and try and make them relatable to them. Often talking about something that's not directly about them can also mean there's really good learning moments and it doesn't feel personal, especially if you're parenting or looking after teens. Ask them to help you check your settings. So even if, again, you know all about the space, getting them to dive onto your device and have a look, it puts them into a position where they feel like you think they know something and you need them. And if they know a lot more than you, it can be super helpful and you can learn from them. So learn together using help guides to establish the safest settings for gaming, social media, streaming services, really locking down, what other people should not, don't need to know. Just setting up, helping them to learn, safe practice around privacy and safety. So look, one of the things I do is I support schools to scope their parents, their staff, their students if they want to use the tools. They are robust survey tools and they give fantastic insights into communities for schools. One of the communities that we looked at, this is whānau responding to 2 different questions. I just did screen grabs. So really pretty cool response here, 96 responses. And one of the questions, how confident are you in keeping yourself safe and your information safe, secure online? So I would look at that, and at a glance, I'd say there's reasonable confidence. Many of those people feel that they are reasonably on top of securing their information and keeping themselves safe. There are definitely those who feel like they are not confident and probably really need some support there. And then another question is, how confident are you in keeping your child or young people safe online? And what we see is much more of a middling to actually, I'm not that confident. I'm not necessarily all over what they're doing. I really don't know what is the most effective thing to do. So we know our families need help as well. So the work that you do, if you're in agencies, NGOs, is so critical to helping. I know we often think, look, a lot of these problems come from the home. It's a parent issue. They should be. Well, they only can work with what they know, and what they don't know, they don't know. So that's where the work you do is so incredibly important. And I say, well done, keep going, keep going. Just finishing very, very soon. One of the things I do is I've got 3 booklets I designed, one for teens, one for tweens, one for younger children. They're about an 8-page booklet. These are just screen grabs of some of the things that are in them, but they're to support those who are parenting or caring for young people. They are designed for the age groups in mind, and they are the just nudges on the sort of kōrero, the things you might ask and open up conversations. They're just examples. They're not telling you have to say this, but these are available. So if you're interested, you can just pop an email through to me. This one here with teens. Yeah, I put all sorts of things in them. Just paraphrasing the Harmful Digital Communications Act into language that they might understand, all kinds of things, talking about privacy, much younger kids. Again, there are about 8 pages in each booklet of interesting things for parents who are caring for young people of those ages. So to summarize, young people care about privacy, but it's complicated. And so we're all in this together. But let's make sure that if we are talking about young people, we are working with them. We've got their voice, their agency involved in it, that we're specific and careful about what it is we're talking about. We use the terminology carefully, and we report against what it is that we're actually trying to find out, so we can debunk and not perpetuate assumptions and myths. You want to get in touch with me, my website there, generationonline.nz, and that's my email. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure. I'm hoping there might be some questions or comments, but otherwise, let's carry on the conversation in other places if you'd like to. Kia ora rawa atu. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll stop sharing my screen now and come on back to Karen. And, oh, I'll have a wee look here. What are your most interesting finding of your research would surprise us? Oh, that's a good question. I think it was because in my research, I was working with those aged between 11 and 12 years of age, but they all had to be on social media to participate in the research, which was done all ethically and you know, working in, and parents had to permit their children to be in. So we had underage children in social media, 11 and 12 years of age. And I just think the maturity, or if you want to dive in and have a look more, because obviously there's loads and loads of examples of the qualitative data there, insights there, their words in my thesis, but it was that they had such mature insight into privacy and their care for it. And the thing that I feel is so critical is we have this gap between if that's how they see it, and we often dismiss and say things like they just put anything out online, they just share it all. Some of that kind of, not everybody, but you know, we hear these things. Or they're just willing to say anything, to sign up to anything, willing to give it away. I think the point is it's really complicated, but they have these mature concepts. And how can we bridge that with then giving them opportunities to feel their own right in online spaces, to be empowered, because the thinking and the realizing and the autonomy and the care is already there. But it's not a space that's done in school per se. Yeah, it's tricky to have a space to do any work. Actually, it's really tricky to do work around online safety and privacy in schools because it doesn't fit in a curriculum. So that's another story too. All righty. Thank you, my Wellington hair. If you were on earlier, I was mentioned about my Wellington hair, except there's no wind today, so I have no excuse. Yep. All right, I'm done. Thank you so much, everybody.